It's almost a fetish for the leftists who are doing it. Honestly, because they know that every time they do something like this to Trump, the mugshot, the arrest, him turning himself in, every time something happens like this, it works to Trump's benefit politically.
The idea that they found him guilty to begin with, if they were desperate enough for that, they want to see the orange jumpsuit for the quote-unquote orange man.
I actually talked to a Secret Service agent, and they kind of already have it planned out. Half the prison would have to be shut down, and they would go with him.
He's going to spend 48 hours a weekend in a prison cell because that's how absolutely obsessed these people are. They can't get away from it. They cannot escape it. They have built this orbit and they are getting sucked in by it.
All right, folks, the Attorney General was held in contempt by a vote of the U.S. House. How's that going to play out? Plus, who's the top Republican surrogate on the campaign trail right now? And will President Biden commute the sentence of Hunter Biden? We're going to get into it with the panel. Tim Murtaugh, Jillian Anderson King is here, and Tony Katz, great radio host. We're going to get into it with all of them in a little bit. Tim Murtaugh, as you know, former communications director for Trump 2020 and author of a brand new book, Swing Hard in Case You Hit It. Jillian Anderson King, former Newsmax publicist and producer. You know her and see her around all over the place. And Tony Katz, host of the Tony Katz radio program. Before I get into it with the panel, though, you never know when things are going to go sideways. And that's why I recommend you go to 4patriots.com/Spicer right now and get yourself a Patriot Power Generator. I'm telling you, put it on your list of things to do right now. You don't know when a power outage is coming. And when it comes, maybe it's a natural disaster. Maybe it's an attack on the power grid. I don't know why or when or how, but I do know that the likelihood of something happening to all of us is pretty high. It's just inevitable. And maybe it's only for a short term. Maybe it's for an hour, but maybe it's for longer, like a week. I think I've told you before, I had to deal with this for a week where I'm running back and forth, filling up gas cans for hours on end to have time out when the generator is going to go. The cool thing about the Patriot Power Generator 2000X is it runs off solar panels that come free with it. Okay. And then for hours, you can run the most powerful things in your house, your refrigerator, TVs, computers, medical devices. You don't want to be without a Patriot Power Generator 2000X when an emergency comes your way. And it's portable, so you can bring it over to a family member's house or a friend, or move it around your house wherever you need it. Bring it to an event, maybe outside. I don't know, but that's the beautiful thing about having them is you don't have to worry about it. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer right now and be ready in time of emergency. All right, let's get that panel going. All right, gang, good to see you all. I have so much to break down. Let's just start with this. The House voted to hold Attorney General Garland in contempt. Does it matter? Will there be any consequences? Tim, let me start with you.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think you'll see the Department of Justice will assert that Garland can't be held in contempt. I mean, they're already floating that idea. There's an internal memo. They will resist it. I mean, I think it'll probably end up in the courts if the Speaker decides to pursue it that far. But I don't think it will have any practical effect. No, because they will resist it and they'll say, no, we're above that. You can't charge me.
Tony, he's got this op-ed. Murtaugh, I was like, that's Tim. Garland does, Merrick Garland, that says, don't attack the judicial system. You're undermining. Well, this isn't necessarily the judicial, but this is part of the rule of law. Congress holding someone in contempt in the Department of Justice. So does he have to obey his own advice now and sort of say, well, okay, I'm in contempt. This is part of the rule of law. I shouldn't criticize it.
Right. So Article 1 discusses Congress and Article nothing discusses the Attorney General. Of course, if he gets held in contempt, he has to deal with that reality. That's true. Now, I agree that the holding him in contempt won't do anything. It doesn't change anything per se. But it's I think, a very good conversation piece that when the Biden administration wants to talk about no one is above the law, here comes Merrick Garland to say, hey, except for me. Of course, me and Anthony Fauci, only people above the law.
Oh, that's just another excuse to be like, I am science. Science is me. What's the big deal? Who cares? 6 feet, 3 feet, 10 feet.
Good impression.
That's the only thing I got going right now. Jillian, the thing is, I've had so many people on the show who keep saying the problem with Republicans is they can pass a vote, they can hold a hearing, and then it just dies. Yeah. And I feel like it more and more that's true. To Tim's point, we do this so that we can go out and send a fundraising, appeal and say, see, we held Merrick Garland in contempt, but there's no follow-up. There's nothing that they do. So, I mean, the big question is, I guess, is there anything more to this?
I mean, I don't I think it's all just messaging, like you said, messaging and fundraising. I mean, we had article impeachment filed against Biden recently. We had one against Austin. We had another against Secretary Mayorkas. And what happens? Nothing happens. I think that like the Republicans can say, hey, look, we're doing something, when really they can't do anything. And Senate is never going to agree with the House. And none of these things can ever come together because the Republicans are loose. They can't come together just like the Democrats can to impeach our president several times.
Yeah, in this case, Tim brought this up, but in this particular case, the contempt, Speaker Johnson could go to court and actually say, we're going to follow through on this. And that would actually show a little bit of chutzpah to say, I'm going to back this up. I'll take you to court and let a federal judge say whether or not you have to comply. But at least I can say I did something instead of going, woe is me.
Hey, Sean, can I make a point here?
Of course you can.
Democrats and Joe Biden, heck, half of his campaign in 2020 was about protecting norms and institutions, right? That's what they always talked about. Let's talk about that. And the Mayorkas impeachment, among others, which was just brought up. You know, the House impeached the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. They presented that impeachment to the Senate, which throughout American history has always held a trial. 100% of the time, the Senate has held a trial. This time, they just dismissed it out of hand and say, nope, we're moving on, as though the impeachment did not happen. So there's your norms and institutions. When it's against one of their guys, they just disregarded it.
But Tim, don't you think the thing? I agree with you 100%. And again, no media backlash, no question about this. But here's the thing: where are our guys? Where was the outrage? It was like they said we dismissed it, and our guys went, okay, when's lunch? I mean, there was I felt like our guys roll over every time and say, oh, you wouldn't believe what the Democrats did. And it's, why would they? I mean, Jillian's point about we do this, we send letters. If you know that there's no resistance, if you're Chuck Schumer and you're going to go, well, they don't do anything. If you're Hakeem Jeffries and go, it's not like they do anything. Or if you're Merrick Garland and you just watched Alejandro Mayorkas get impeached and nothing happened, why do you care? You're like, they don't ever follow through. They're like a bully who yells in the yard, but then never actually follows through. You're like, who cares? It's all talk.
I hear you. That's where, you got to win elections.
Yeah.
If we had a majority in the Senate, if we still had the White House, things would be different on those counts.
Well, now we're getting into the whole reason why people like Trump to begin with. They feel he's the actual fighter as opposed to the Republicans you're talking about.
And that's what, I'm so glad you brought that point up, Tony, because when people ask me all the time about Trump, I go, you hear the talking points all the time. We're going to move the embassy to Jerusalem. We're going to do this. We're going to renegotiate that. And Trump did it. And even if you didn't agree with the policy, I think a lot of people said, you know what? This is a guy who says what he thinks, actually followed through on stuff. It wasn't the same old Washington massage talking points. And I think that's an important point because you see Biden, he talks about the rule of law, then he doesn't follow up on it. And in this case, I do wonder whether or not that's the thing, is that they look at Trump and go, God, he actually did do things and shook up the institutions that needed some shaking.
I think you're exactly right about that. That has always been the appeal of Trump. I mean, back when I worked on Capitol Hill during the 2015 and 2016 campaigns, member of Congress I worked for, Lou Barletta, early on endorsed Trump in 2015. And he said in his issue, Lou Barletta's issue had always been immigration, illegal immigration. And Lou Barletta said these words, and you heard a lot of these people, this, Sean, because you were there at the RNC at the time. People always said over and over and over across America, I like the guy because he says out loud what everybody else is thinking. And that's what Lou Barletta said. Trump is the only guy that I've ever seen who talks about immigration the way I think about immigration. And that's why I'm backing him. That's exactly what appealed to people about Trump in the very first place. I think that was their first impression of Trump for a lot of people. And I think it still is.
I remember my dad telling me, early on in the election cycle, he said, I always hear politicians talking about bringing jobs back and da-da-da. He said, Trump said, I'm going to get your job back. And it was very personal and people looked at it in a very different way. And I hadn't thought about it in that perspective. But I think if you're a worker and you're watching a guy who's willing to fight, you're like, this isn't normal. Jillian, I want to ask you about something that kind of happened yesterday. And it was a little bit of a Biden sleight of hand, right? So a couple days ago, he says, I'm not going to pardon my son. I kind of kept thinking to myself, I don't buy it. I just think that's the talking point. But then yesterday, when asked about whether he would commute the sentence of his son, here we are, right? The difference, a pardon wipes your record clean. A commutation gets the sentence gone. So if you were sentenced to a month in jail, you get out right away. That's the key part. And if you're Joe, do you really care about his record? Because you can probably fix that on the way out the door, but you just don't want him in jail. And they wouldn't answer the question. I think that something's up here. I mean, speaking of rule of law and the attorney general, like that to me is going to be key. What does Hunter Biden get sentenced with? So maybe we start with that. Let's just go around the horn. Do you think that Hunter Biden gets sentenced to jail? And then we can answer the question about whether or not the sentence gets commuted. But Jillian, do you think he gets sentenced to jail time?
I mean, I hope so. I think so, because I think it's very difficult for them to then sentence Trump like they want to if they don't sentence Hunter, right? And I think that's why they're all doing this. Hey, we can do it to our own. It's only fair. We'll do it to Trump next.
Tim?
Yeah, I think that they have to sentence him to something, if not very much, a month or two or something like that. I think it makes it very difficult for them to keep up this argument that they've got going, which I believe is a charade, because I guess we'll get into the Hunter stuff a little bit, but I think the Biden Justice Department needs to keep up this narrative that, hey, look, we're following the rule of the law, even though it's the son of the president. So I really feel like, even though you've seen the prosecutors start to argue for don't go overboard, that Hunter Biden has to obey the rule of law and not anything further, right? They don't want him to have to pay the price, but he should pay the same price as everybody else. I think they've got to, for appearance sake and for their narrative, they got to give him something.
Tony, I think this is, the president keeps saying in these statements, I'm the president, but I'm also a father. And no father wants to see their kid in jail, especially the way that they've set Hunter up as this guy that could have a relapse at any point. By the way, Tim, before I forget this really great point that I think you made on Fox, I quoted it on the show yesterday about the fact that this was the only crime that didn't tie itself directly to Joe Biden. Right. And I thought that was a very interesting point, that they kind of went after the one thing that didn't have a tail that led back to Biden, so that they could say that they were going after him. But anyway, Tony, I want to get back to this issue. I don't think that Joe Biden can handle seeing his son in jail.
I want to say for the record, Hunter Biden's not going to go to jail, and I will bet nearly anything on that.
When you say not go, wait, let's then, if we're going to put some money down,
he will not be sentenced to jail. They will not put him in jail. It's absolutely, positively not going to happen. What do you want to bet? There could be many things that he is sentenced to. He will not spend a night, an hour in jail. Just won't happen.
Okay, I actually agree with you. I think they're going to find a way to say it's a first-time offense. He has no record except lying on other forms and having a massive drug problem. But that's aside the point. But I do agree with you. I don't think that they're going to send him to jail. I think they will send him to probation or give him an ankle bracelet or something like that. Because my guess is that if you look at this crime, there's some low amount of jail time, if any, that first-time offenders get. So I think in this case, the judge will say, hey, although the one thing that's interesting and where I kind of always have that asterisk is, remember that Hunter Biden didn't admit to this. They're saying that this wasn't true unless he admits that he's culpable of this. And what do they call it? Allocute or something in the court. That I wonder how the court looks at that and says, you haven't accepted your guilty plea and asked for remorse. Therefore, we're going to sentence you this. I still agree with you, though. I don't think he's going to jail because of that. But let's just keep going with this thread for a second. That being said, Jillian, do you think that Donald Trump gets sentenced to jail?
Unless it gets thrown out from that new Facebook comment, I think they're going to try to throw him in jail. I mean, I actually talked to a Secret Service agent, and they kind of already have it planned out. Half the prison would have to be shut down, and they would go with him, which is really interesting.
But let's get back to this. Do you think that Judge Marchand on July 11th says, I'm sentencing you, I don't care if it's 10 minutes or 10 days or 10 months. Do you think that the sentence includes jail time?
I want to hope no. I'm going to go no for that. I think they'd see an eruption in this country that they've never seen before.
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know that anybody is prepared for what the reaction is going to be if Donald Trump is campaigning for president from a jail cell. I mean, that.
Wait, hold on. I want to be cute.
Hold on.
I'm going to be cute. I want to be very clear on the question. I asked whether he would be sentenced to jail, not go to jail.
I
And I think
think-
there's a distinction there.
There is, and that's what I was going to get to. I think he will actually receive a jail sentence, but I think the judge will suspend it pending appeal, and he won't actually have to report. So we won't have an answer to that during the course of this election cycle. I think it'll get pushed off beyond whenever the appeal is. And there's movement afoot for the. I don't know how this would work exactly for the Republicans in the House anyway. Some legislation to somehow move former presidents' criminal cases into federal court automatically. At which point, if he becomes president, he could conceivably pardon himself. So that's another angle that God knows we have to consider all of them here. I guess.
Tony, does he do jail time?
Unprecedented.
He is going to get sentenced to jail, and he's going to do 48 hours. The idea that they found him guilty to begin with, and the conversation about the parameters that the judge gave for this jury, which it's kind of hard to blame them in many ways if you were given this level of rules to go by. The desperation to get the guilty on the 34 counts, which is really one count broken up into 34 parts. Right. It just sounds more grandiose as 34. If they were desperate enough for that, they want to see the orange jumpsuit for the quote unquote orange man. He's going to spend 48 hours a weekend in a prison cell because that's how absolutely obsessed these people are. They can't get away from it. They cannot escape it. They have built this orbit and they are getting sucked in by it. 48 hours in prison. I don't want it. Not at all. But that's what's going to happen.
It's almost a fetish for the leftists who are doing it. Honestly, because they know that every time they do something like this to Trump, the mugshot, the arrest, him turning himself in, every time something happens like this, it works to Trump's benefit politically. It worked within the Republican primaries when they were going on, and it's happening in the general election too against Biden. Yet they keep doing it. I think you're right. There's a really good chance they might force him for that orange jumpsuit picture.
We've got this on tape. I will tell you this. I was with Tony on Hunter. I'm half with Tony on this. I think he gets sentenced, but he doesn't go. Why? Because all this has been about is a bumper sticker. They want to be able to say Donald Trump's a convicted felon sentenced to jail. They don't actually need to see him. And I think that I'm with Tim. You lose the narrative.
Who's the they?
Huh?
Who's the they?
The they
if we're
is
talking about people in power, maybe they're quote unquote sensible, but the rank and file on the streets that want to burn everything down,
I get that.
They want a jumpsuit.
They do. They want the jumpsuit. They want him in jail the whole time. Don't get me wrong. But I think that what they realize is that being able to say that he was convicted felon, that he was sentenced to jail, I get it. I think that the problem is that Marshawn wants to be a hero. Right. I've talked so many lawyers through all of these constitutional issues. And I've said to them, if there's so many issues, why did Marshawn do this? He went to law school. Why would he allow these Sixth Amendment issues to come up and not address them? All blah, 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 blah. I believe that fundamentally he wants to be the hero to the left. I'm the guy who took the case. I'm the guy who sentenced him. I sentenced him to jail. But then he says, hey, there's an appeal. I'm going to let it play out and I'm going to suspend the sentence until, right? He just wants credit for being the guy. I think that you jump the shark the sentence you send him to jail and put him in that jumpsuit. And I think Marshawn wants to be a hero and he realizes, and this is the key, Tony, because you're asking who they is. I think the question is Marshawn realizes that if he becomes the reason that Trump loses, i.e. I sentenced him to jail, then he's a hero. If I sentenced him to jail and sent him to jail and Trump wins, it's going to be because of Marshawn. And I think Marshawn knows that if he goes too far, that he will become the reason and the scapegoat if Trump serves a second term, much like a lot of people on the left blame James Comey for that Hillary Clinton press conference. That's my take on this. So I think he gets sentenced to jail, but doesn't go.
Yeah. I think that's a cogent argument. I think that's a sound argument, but I think you give everybody way too much credit. This is pure bloodlust. And when you are dealing with bloodlust, you have to see the blood. So I would go with the odds on this 48 hours. You make a great argument.
Okay.
I
mean, like I said, I'm on record now. I think that, like I said, Marshawn to me made these donations. He is clearly in a certain camp that doesn't like Donald Trump and wants Joe Biden to win. He wants Biden to win. He wants to stop Trump. Therefore, how do I do that? I think that that's in the back of his mind. This is a guy who didn't recuse himself when his daughter's making millions of dollars. This is a guy who made contributions. He knows exactly what he's doing and what he wants the outcome to be. And the question I think is in the back of his mind is, how do I ensure I don't go too far and let the house, like the Jenga game, and pull out too many pieces? So that's my take on this. I get it. And I could see it. I don't think that you're like, oh my God, I can't see the scenario that you're playing out. I totally could see him sentencing to 48 hours. And I'd be like, okay, we just won the election again. My back of my mind says that he is so politically calculating, that be Mershon, that he doesn't want to do this.
Can I ask everybody a question?
Yeah. It's the panel.
So I have seen Alyssa Farah over at The View and a couple others.
I'm sorry about that.
Say, well, it happens sometimes. You're flipping and things come up. And they're making the argument that since the conviction of President Trump, he's gone down in the polls. I look at Real Clear Politics like everybody else. I don't see it in battleground states. I don't see it in the 5-way race. Has anybody here seen anything data-wise that would show that Trump is slipping post-conviction?
I've only seen that delusion-wise on things like The View. I mean, I'm from Ohio, and I'm from a really important part of Ohio that tends to sway the state. And I can't tell you how many people, like my parents' friends, contacted me as soon as it happened. Hey, how do I donate to Trump? This
Exactly.
Is crap. And I'm hearing that, like, again, not one or two times, over and over again. I mean, small dollar donations, these blue collar workers from these flyover states asking me, how do I help Trump? I think it's exact reversal. And how many times did we see people who are set on the aisle say, I wasn't for Trump, but I'm against this persecution, so I'm going to vote for Trump. I think it's just delusional to think anything else.
Tony, to your question, there have been a couple national polls that within the margin of error have popped a point or two for Biden, but that's not a switch. That's just within the margin of error. So they are grasping at straws, to say the least. I do want to talk. We've talked about all these bad people. There is one good person out there right now. You guys who've been longtime watchers of the show know about my friend Leo Grillo from Delta Rescue. If you go to deltarescue.org, you can see all the great work that Leo is doing to provide animals. And I'm talking dogs, cats, horses, you name it, a no-kill sanctuary for life. What does that mean? It's not a shelter. It's not like a way station where they hang out. Leo created a sanctuary for life where animals get the veterinary care, the nutritional care they need for life. And it relies entirely and 100% on donations from people like me and you, animal lovers that want to see a mission like this endure. So if you go to deltarescue.org, you can look at all the videos of the great work that they do and how these animals get the help and can roam freely. It's amazing what Leo has built and done. But if we wanted to keep going, it's our donations that make it happen. So if you know someone who knows Bob Menendez and has an extra gold brick in his pocket, cash it out, send it to him, and help Leo do this. And more importantly, when you're on that website, deltarescue.org, check out the estate planning kit, because the mission will endure for decades and generations if we can help Leo's mission do that by funding it through our estates, our legacies. Be part of that. If you're an animal lover like me, consider doing that. Go to the website, deltarescue.org, and check it out. All right, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the debate. It's coming up. RFK is saying that he's going to make it, okay? So let me just start. Tony Katz, I want to start with this basic question. Will RFK be on the debate stage on June 27th when CNN hosts that first debate?
No. And it's not that I don't want to see him there. He's not my candidate. He's not my guy. I don't understand conservatives who say, I would take a look at him. You clearly don't know anything about the man's history and past statements. CNN won't be able to look the Biden administration or Democrats in the eye if they let RFK on the stage. And if they allow him on the stage, Joe Biden won't be there. They need Biden. They not going to let him on the stage. I'll put money on that one too.
Wow. We got to have, after the show, we got to have like a little board, and I'm going to go down. I'm going to win place show with the
nice. With
the sentence. And then, are you a Vegas guy, Tony? I feel like everything turns into, I'm going to put money on it. Now I'm in for it. Are you a normal bettor?
No. I can play some video poker. I've learned how to do that. I'm willing to lose money at craps, and after that, I'm done. I'm out. Just give me a cigar and leave me be.
Political betting only. All right, we'll do this
absolutely.
afterwards. Jillian, what about you? Does he make the debate stage?
No, I don't think he does. I think that CNN and Biden, they work hand in hand. I don't think there's any way they're going to let this happen.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm with Tony and Jillian on this as well. I think that it was pretty clear from the way that the debates got rolled out that the Biden campaign and CNN were in on it together before the announcement was made. And so I can't see any way that they would let RFK Jr. near the stage when it's a Biden CNN production.
So here's the thing, and this is where I'm with you guys. So we're unanimous on this. He's not going to be on the stage. But RFK has said, now here's the thing, there is a legal piece to this. According to the Federal Election Commission, and I ran the debates in 2016, part of the thing is you have to structure any debate to avoid it becoming an in-kind contribution. You have to create neutral criteria. Now, you can make them as crazy as you want, but they have to be published and they have to be something that doesn't change. So you can't move them around. So CNN has set debate criteria. I think it's 15% in 4 polls and have to be on enough ballots to get to 270 electoral votes. So they had to do that, right? Here's the question that I think is going to be really interesting for the lawyers. Right now, Biden and Trump won't actually show a path to 270. They're not on any ballots until they become the nominees of their parties, which won't happen until after the first debate. So that's number one. Now, I've talked to some people at CNN and some legal folks who say, well, we get around that because they are major party candidates and major party candidates always end up. Okay, I'll buy that for a second. RFK's case is I'm on the ballot in enough states now to get well in excess of 270. The problem with RFK's argument is that states have not yet certified that he is actually, yes, you've handed in the signatures, but we, because of our state deadlines, et cetera, haven't acknowledged that you've technically qualified. So he's got this catch-22 where he might technically be on at some point, but he hasn't officially qualified. So that's the thing. The other piece was 4 polls in which you're at 15%. He has qualified in that. So the question that I think is going to be interesting is the legal aspect against CNN. Does the pressure become too great not to let him on? I'm side with Tony because I think that Biden says, hey, you guys agreed to this. We're out from Biden campaign if you guys shift this. CNN had to do a legal kabuki dance, but I think that they know that if they let it on, both candidates might bail.
Yeah, and I think that's a risk analysis there. I mean, what's the risk of denying RFK Jr. being on the stage? The risk is he makes a big stink. CNN might look bad. They look like they gamed the system in favor of Biden to protect him from RFK Jr. There might be a legal challenge. They'd end up in court versus the president, the incumbent president of the United States, and every Democrat in this country being furious at you and like a resounding fury like you've never heard. I think they'd choose going to court with RFK all day long.
Anyone disagree with that?
I just do.
No, I agree with that. And I was watching RFK talk about this, and he has 5 polls in his favor. I mean, he seems to he's the only one that meets the criteria. And I think he has a case on his hands, but I just don't think it'll happen. There's no way.
Yeah. By the way, I will say this, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just the day and the moon, but I'm going to agree with Tony Katz again. The idea that any conservative thinks voting for RFK because of his vaccine stance is the only reason. You guys got to remember, this is a tried and true pure-on leftist who has been a Democrat, a far left, Kennedy Democrat his whole life. And suddenly everybody gets excited. You are helping Joe Biden get reelected if you vote for Kennedy. Hands down. Yeah. And I just think everybody needs to get that message. I'm so tired. I hear the same kind of people that Tony's talking to who say, well, I want to consider him. Consider him for what?
No, he's an insane environmentalist. He's further to the left on green issues than AOC is. Yeah, that's no conservative, no Republican should ever consider voting for someone who is to the left of AOC on environmental issues. And that means government action and controlling your personal behavior. That's what that means.
And there's a bunch of other wild people out there. I don't know how many times you guys have heard this, but I'd say a few months ago, I heard it a lot more. Well, maybe Trump should pick RFK for his vice president. I go, in what world? In what world?
I was watching
I feel about that, Jillian, the way I feel about when people talk about Tulsi Gabbard. I like Tulsi Gabbard. Yes. I wish Tulsi Gabbard were a conservative. There's so many things I want to like, but you can't. In her core, she's not. And she isn't a VP pick. She isn't a VP choice. Neither is RFK. I've heard that many times. It is painful to listen to.
I don't get it.
Can I throw Nikki Haley on that list, Tony? I mean, I hate this. Like, he should also pick Nikki Haley because that'll help him. No, it won't help him. Stop. I want to revoke your voting card if you say something like that, because that's not how it works. It's like everyone's like, well, Tulsi would do great. Nikki Haley would do great. He should also pick Larry Hogan or Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney because they'll help with moderates. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to happen.
And it's those people who say that, Sean, they're not thinking ahead to 2028. Whoever's going to be his VP now, should they win, will run in 28 on their own. Do we want a Tulsi Gabbard running as a GOP candidate? Do we want RFK running as the GOP candidate? Adam Kinzinger? No. Those are very, very horrible ideas. So you have to think as a VP as the next presidential candidate.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I would also point out that he was on the RFK was on the Sage Steele show, Sean, and was asked about his position on abortion. And he was very clear. You don't have to connect the dots or anything. He believes that there should be no restrictions on abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. He absolutely expressly said that.
You know, if you say that on Meet the Press, Christian Welker will jump in and say, that's not the Democrats' position. There's no right. I mean, that's their job right now.
Right. But RFK said, yes, this is it. This is
what are you using? Words or an audio recording? I don't care. It's not the Democrats' extreme position. I'm not allowing you to say that on Meet the Press. Yeah. All right. That being said, since we're talking about VPs, Trump said that he's going to announce at the convention. I get the move. I remember in 2016 flying up to New York from Cleveland to go roll out Mike Pence. I think that I get why he's doing it. It's more of a show. It makes the convention more interesting. Tim, you're the communicator. If you were asked about this back in 2020, if you kind of were back in your old role, would you think this is a good, I kind of go, okay, the convention, you get free media. Why take up one of your free ones, right? You're going to get the VP is going to talk Wednesday night. They're going to get all the eyes of the world on him. Why not name them now or in a week from now or whatever, get a couple bites at the apple instead of doubling up?
Well, there's a couple reasons. One is the performance aspect of it is, you know, Sean, everybody knows Donald Trump is a great, great showman. And all this speculation, what's he going to do? Who's he going to pick and all that stuff? That's fantastic for him. He'd lead up and the unveiling, have it a big show when you get the most possible attention. I think it's right up his alley to do it that way. The other thing is if you don't announce it in advance and you don't have weeks of time leading up to the convention where everybody knows the name of the VP, that limits the amount of time for opposition research, and you can get through much of your convention. They'll be able to do it quickly, but you don't give them any lead time, and they can get through part of the convention with everybody still scrambling to try to dig up dirt on whoever the VP nominee is going to be, because you know that's what the opposition is going to do, and you're going to limit their access to it. I think actually,
yeah. Although I will say this on that, you make a lot of good points, but I will say on the last one, like when I was at the RNC, you know, for the various cycles, we would have a dossier on any of the potential rumor VP picks, right? We sort of. So it's not like they're sitting back waiting. Trump's been very clear. Tony, do you think that this is a good rollout strategy, waiting for the convention?
Depends on the day, right? I made the argument that he should have made a pick last month. I absolutely get the idea of making the decision or making the announcement at the convention itself. I don't think it's about preventing hits on the candidate, whoever the VP pick is, because the hits will come immediately. The deluge, every outlet will have its talking points by the end of that nominee's speech that night. So what does it matter? I do like the idea of getting somebody out there to go out there and offer up a double level of campaigning and be on their own to do that. Not to be somebody who's doing 5 minutes and then bringing Trump to the stage, but commanding a stage on their own, maybe engaging a little more in some of those policy conversations and let Trump stick with the rah-rah conversation. I'm 50-50, and however he does it, it's fine by me.
Jillian, the thing that's interesting, he names a VP now, and he gets a lot of excitement around that person, and they can go out there and headline events. But right now, you got 7 or 8 people doing the dance. You know, Doug Burgum, Tim Scott, they're raising money. They're on every show. They're like super surrogates, right? So he's got 8, 9, 10 super surrogates out there doing all of this. If he picks one, yeah, they might get a lot more attention. But you've just cut. I mean, they're not going to do the same dance that they're doing now, right?
No, I think you're totally right. Plus, how many of you have gotten the same email I've gotten? Hey, help Trump pick his VP as a campaign effort and fundraising, right? We have to stop those campaign emails.
That didn't just go to me,
huh?
I thought when it said,
just
Sean,
me,
help me.
There's to us all, but I do think opposition's already locked and loaded for the 8 that we know about, that, as far as the left go, they're ready to attack unless he picks a candidate that we haven't heard about. They're all ready to go and smack them. But I also think you're right. Why waste the spotlight on the RNC when there's already going to be cameras there? But I don't know. I'm ready for him to pick. The only other thing I could think of is what if we are getting a Republican from Florida, and what if they need more time to get their ducks in a row? Because that's a whole other process.
I'm glad you brought that. I keep saying to people, like, you gotta, when Dick Cheney was chosen, he lived in Texas. He had property in Wyoming. He was able to register there. It's not just moving. You've got to register, and depending on the state, make sure that they give you enough time to actually become a registered voter. Some states actually require you to live in the state for X amount before you can do that. If he were to choose Rubio or Donalds, that would have to resign from Congress, move somewhere. And that's why I don't think it's going to be them. I really don't. I think that is way too big of a dance to say, by the way, resign from your seat in Congress, the House or the Senate, respectively, move to a state in which you have no affiliation to right now, get residency, register to vote, and then I'll roll you out. I mean, I just, there was a hard enough kabuki dance when Hillary tried to do it from New York. I think this is way too complicated. All right. I got a couple more things I want to get to. Tim, I'm going to start with you. There's a story out in Axios, and it says, the big thing, MAGA's new kingmaker, and it's Don Jr. It says Donald Trump Jr. has become the behind-the-scenes power broker in GOP politics, a guy whose endorsement are coveted as much as anyone this cycle, except his father's. Why it matters, Don and his friends are most eager and best positioned, blah, blah, blah. Let me ask you a question. Outside of Don Jr., if you were running a campaign this cycle and you had to get a surrogate to come to help your candidate, your campaign, your cause, who outside Don Jr. would be your top 3?
Wow, boy, you put me on the spot. Top 3 outside.
I'm so glad Tim's first,
and I get to go first, Sean. Wow.
Look, if you have 2 or 4, I'm not. But I thought that's an easy one. Don's top, hands down. He raises money.
Well,
I get called all the time about, can you help me out? Can you get Don to do something? I'm like number 47 on the list. But who else would you want if you were running a campaign and said, we need someone in here that's going to energize the base, help us raise money? Who would it be?
Well, I think one of them, I would go with JD Vance.
Yep.
And I can't help but notice that he's also on the VP short list that we all know about. I like Tim Scott. He is also on the VP short list, as you know. And I'm going to pick one that probably is not top of mind for any of y'all, but I know that she is a very big draw when it comes to congressional candidates, and that's Congresswoman Harriet Hageman from Wyoming.
Whoa.
She's the one who beat Liz Cheney.
Yeah, I know. I didn't see that one coming.
Rock solid conservative. Really, she's perfect. She's great on every single issue.
Wow.
And conservatives love her, and she will ever be the person who beat Liz Cheney. She'll always
Tony
be
Katz,
that,
I know you're, but if you needed someone for a big radio thing or an event, who would you want?
I first want to say it really depends on where you're running. I think that different people for different places. I like the JD Vance pick. I think if you're trying to engage Trump red meat, that's the way to go. If you want that, but you want to engage a little more of a defense conversation or national security conversation, from Indiana, Congressman Jim Banks of the Indiana 3rd, who is very much aligned or in that orbit, and is also the Senate candidate here, and seems pretty clear to pick up that Senate seat being left behind by Senator Mike Braun. Yeah. If we're going for wild card kind of stuff, people who will just make you laugh and make you think, you got Representative Fox. She is wonderful. And I would take Senator John Kennedy with me everywhere, all the time. No one better.
All right, this is
that would be a popular pick right there.
I am impressed. This is for a guy who was worried about being on the hot seat. 3 strong picks. All right, Jillian, you got to follow Tony Katz. Who do you want in your district in Ohio?
Such a good one. Okay, I think if I'm gonna say Ohioans, we love Jim Jordan. I don't think he's like the most energizing, but we love him. We think he's one of our own. We think that he's for the people. They love him. I actually do think I would have to pick Byron Donalds is one of my
there you
personal
go.
friends.
Another good
I
one.
think that he is such a good guy because he's able to hit the left and all
Yep.
the arguments, especially on race cards, Black community, when it comes to prison reform. He is so good at hitting that stuff, and he's able to raise money. We see that. He's really good, and I think he's really sharp. I love the way he speaks. And this is not anyone even in a sitting in any and he's not a politician, right? But I've never seen anyone raise money as fast as Charlie Kirk. And John Finger calls him a lot on the campaign.
That's also a good one.
Charlie
That's
Kirk
a
is
oh,
my
that's
wild card. Never seen anyone raise money like him.
That's strong pick. And there's a great story about his influence in the religious community out in the last 24 hours. Good pick. All right, I want to cover one more subject before we get to winners and losers real quick. This one, if you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, you know, I mean, look, things come in threes, right? Earlier this year, Hall & Oates said they're not going to tour together. I thought that was going to be horrible. Then I find out Ben and Jennifer are having issues. There's number 2. What's number 3? I found out Joey Chestnut and Nathan's are breaking up. This is a big problem. But here's the thing. And Tim, I'm going to start with you. You're a baseball guy. I know you're into the so this is the thing. Joey Chestnut, perennial winner of the annual 4th of July Nathan's hot dog eating competition, is out of this year's beef barf over a deal he made to represent a different wiener brand. Okay, what's that brand? The Impossible Burger. This isn't real. This is fake. A hot dog guy, right? So here's the thing. Remember, he gobbled up 76 dogs and buns in 2022. He's been the world holder since 2016. But here's the kicker, Tim. A rep for Major League Eating, MLE. Yes. Apparently there's a league which Nathan sanctions to run the event. I mean, like, what? This was a hot dog eating contest. Said that, you know, that he had to back out because of these endorsement deals. A source said that Chestnut was paid $200,000 to appear in the Nathan's contest this year and was offered a $1.2 million contract. And he still says no.
Right.
What the heck?
He makes a lot of money. I'm going to tell you something. I know a little bit about Joey Chestnut's little empire there. When I was formerly, when I used to work in the federal government way back when I was a Bush appointee, I worked at the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation with Joey Chestnut's sister. I know Joey. Chestnut's
Joey.
sister. I never met Joey, but I know his sister.
That's good.
And he gets paid appearance fees for lots of stuff. It's not just the Nathan's deal. He goes all over the country and he eats all kinds of stuff, not just hot dogs, right? Crawdads or donuts or hamburgers or whatever. And he holds, I don't know how many dozens of world records for a variety of different kinds of food. So he makes a very nice living doing this. And I think he thought he was the king, where he could still go to Nathan's, but be sponsored by the fake dog or something like that. You can't do that.
No,
you can't do it. Just but it's like going to the McDonald's hamburger eating contest while you're sponsored by Burger King wearing a Burger King
at least
t-shirt.
that's still
They're not going
meat.
to stand.
At least that's still meat.
Though. It's a sponsorship deal. You
Hold
can't.
on.
Tony Katz, Tony, before you weigh in, I want to tell you
should know better.
Here are the quotes.
It's business.
Here are the quotes that I just want to read to you and then I want you to respond. He said, this is in the story. He says, he's the Michael Jordan of competitive eating. But imagine if Michael Jordan said to Nike, I love being the face of Nike, but I want to do commercials for Adidas. MLE, this is the Major League Eating Organization. And Nathan's went to great lengths to accommodate Joey and his management team. He's got management.
He makes a lot of money, Sean.
Joey Chestnut, this is a direct quote, is an American hero. American hero. We would love nothing more than to have him at Nathan's famous international hot dog eating contest. We hope he returns when he is not representing a rival brand. What the heck is going on?
And the American hero is perfect. What's more American than eating a hot dog besides maybe a hot dog inside of an apple pie?
No, actually doing something that merits the title hero.
Yeah. Well, you know, everybody has their own take, and I'm with you. But just really quick. So Joey Chestnut lives in the town north of me. He moved to Indiana. He takes part in the shrimp cocktail eating contest that St. Elmo's does around Big Ten Championship. He is a monster. And yes, he built Major League Eating. Him and him alone, you could talk about some of the Japanese stars or whatever. He made this happen. The $200,000 appearance fee was paid by Nathan's to him to get him to show up to the contest. But the $1.2 million is the deal he has, a 4-year deal with Impossible Foods. Why didn't Nathan's put him under contract? Why didn't Hebrew National put him under contract?
You realize in the NBA and the WNBA, where Caitlin Clark is playing, the max you can get is $75,000, and Joey Chestnut's getting $1.2 million to eat
They
a bunch
should learn to eat sandwiches. There's clearly more value in it.
Dude, this is insane.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
All right. I always end the show by doing winners and losers. Real quick, Jillian, who do you think won the week? Who do you think lost the week?
Okay, I think that Joe Biden at Juneteenth. No, I'm gonna switch that up. The WNBA, they lost, or the Women's Olympic basketball team, they lost. We're not putting Caitlin Clark on there since we just talked about Caitlin. I think the winner of the week, Joey Chestnut. I mean, look at what we just said. How could it not be Joey Chestnut?
Tony Katz, who do you have?
I do think that the loser of the week is Joe Biden. Your son gets convicted. You have a horrible showing in France, and you won't go to the first dinner at the G7 summit because you're just too tired to do so. You're too tired to show up. The winner of the week is really kind of hard because there's nobody who stands out and says, man, this worked out very, very well for them. But I think in a week of bad weeks where Biden continues to show his age, it continues to show his ineptness, Trump gets another win.
Okay. Tim, I'm sorry, real quick. Who do you got?
The winner of the week, I'll go with the New York Post because they were the first to report on Hunter Biden's laptop, and it was introduced as evidence this week during the trial, proving that it was indeed real. And the corollary to that, the losers, plural, of the week are the 51 former intelligence officials who signed a letter saying that the laptop was Russian propaganda, which it was not.
We are so
Tim,
great.
You win.
So, hold on.
Wins.
So my loser of the week is Hunter Biden, and not just because he got convicted, because he shouldn't have even been there. He had a sweetheart deal. He chose not to take it. And I think that is why he's the loser. He should have never been there. He's one of those guys that told his lawyers, I can probably take my chances with the jury and beat them, and he lost. My winner of the week, Tim Murtaugh. His book, Swing Hard, in case you hit it, is back on the Amazon top 10 list. It's a great read about politics and Tim's struggles and is overcoming everything. And so, Tim, congratulations for being back on the Amazon list. And I think there's a reason books don't do that. They peak and then they go away. Yours came back because I think people are reading it and telling their friends about what a great read it is. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. It traces my journey from waking up in jail to flying on Air Force One in less than 4 years. So thank you, Sean.
Wow.
Thank
you bet. All right, go to Amazon, get it now. I'm looking forward to digging into this book, but the reviews speak extremely strong of this. So anyway, all right, guys, great job. Thanks for being with us today. Tomorrow, by the way, as I mentioned, a professor from Yale, you didn't hear that coming, did you? You didn't think that is going to break down Trump's legal case in a way that you've never heard. Make sure you hit the notification button right now. Subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, iHeart, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.